challenge the mind,
and spark the soul.
See you on the mountain. Let's bring Sinai down under.
Good evening and welcome to Sinai Down Under Part 4. I'm Tali and I will be your host this evening. For the last month, we have had an amazing journey and an incredible learning experience where we have all united and learned about different issues facing us as a community. We've spoken to both local and international leaders, and our grand finale will be no different. Tonight, we are going to travel all around Australia and we will experience and hear bold, emotional and jaw-dropping stories from a Jewish Australian life in the Outback, the bush and simply off the beaten track. This journey around Australia is filled with stories of unity, pride and resilience, and that is the story of us as a community. One of the beautiful things about the Jewish community is that no matter where you go, you have a home and a place where you belong. I'm really excited tonight to be speaking to some of the most amazing ambassadors of the world, men and women who have given up the luxuries of an established Jewish community to create their own Jewish centers so that every Jewish person, no matter where they are, can connect with their heritage and live according to their identity. Tonight, we're going to start in Tasmania, where we're going to meet Rebbetzin Rochel Gordon. Rochel and her husband Yochanim moved to Tasmania from overseas in 2011, where they live with their two children, Shalom, who is 10, and Yehudis, who is 4. When they moved to Tasmania, they were told that there were only 150 Jews in Tasmania, but since then, there are well over 500, and each week more and more are coming out of the woodwork, which is amazing. When Rochel was growing up, she promised her parents that she would never live in a place without a Jewish school, a mikvah, a kosher takeout, and now she is living in Tasmania of all places. Rochel, thank you so much for being here. Now, tonight, can you please tell us the amazing story of how a horrific swastika actually helped Tasmania to celebrate Pesach this year?
Thank you so much, Tali. I feel so privileged to be speaking with such a powerful group of people. Starting on January 16th with the defaced Star of David on the Launceston Synagogue and leading to a string of anti-Semitic slogans and graffiti around Tasmania, culminating in late February with a swastika prominently displayed in front of her home, horrifying local residents and the state as a whole. As the community came together in condemnation, lawmakers and officials expressing their abhorrence, my husband and I had another challenge approaching. With Pesach drawing near, we had plans to travel to Melbourne to organise our Pesach shipments, matzah, wine, kosher meat, and other goods, none of which are available locally. Every year, we tackle this challenge with grace and patience, a much needed trait when waiting for imports from overseas and shipments to arrive at our doorstep. This would all be shipped to Launceston, where a pop-up shop would be held or hand-delivered to Jews scattered around the entire state. In the best of times, Chabad of Tasmania is the only supplier of kosher products in the state. This will be proven to be the challenge of the decade. At the same time, coronavirus was beginning to threaten Tasmania like everywhere else. In the words of the Tasmanian Premier, Fortress Tasmania was being put into effect from Saturday, 21st of March, essentially cutting off Tasmania from the rest of the country, with a government-enforced 14-day quarantine for all Tasmanian resident arrivals. So we weren't going anywhere, we had to stay put. Aaron Hout, who assists with the running of the Facebook group called Coronavirus Jewish Response Task Force, was sent a screenshot of someone saying, "Hey, I've got a friend in Tasmania who needs a hand." And from there, Operation Tasmania was formed. After explaining to Aaron the situation of the Jewish community in Tasmania, with the strong potential of not having any Passover food for the holiday, Aaron got the ball rolling, not allowing anything to get into his way. With responding from the shipping company, don't expect anything until mid-May, fearing that the entire state would go into a strict lockdown, which would make Pesach distribution impossible. We knew we had to act very fast. However, God had already orchestrated the plan of Operation Tasmania, and no virus would stop that. Out of the blue, my husband received a phone call from the Tasmanian Senator, Erica Betts, who had just read an article in the newspaper about the recent spate of neo-Nazi anti-Semitic incidents featuring an interview with my husband and I. The article that was supposed to be published 4 weeks prior has only been published now. What a God-given incident. Now, Senator Rebbetzins was on the line. I didn't know that we had a rabbi in Tasmania, he told my husband, inquiring if there was any way he could help the Jewish community. My husband was about to end the conversation, and I was nudging him from across the room, whispering, this can't be anything but hashgacha pratis, divine providence. See if he can help us with our Pesach stuff. My husband jumped right in and informed the senator of our predicament, and Eric said he would see what he could do. Not 10 minutes later, Rebbetzins called back and told my husband to call the CEO of the Spirit of Tasmania, Bernard Dwyer, who was willing to assist. Bernard offered to carry a van full of the Jewish community's Passover goods on board the ship and sail it to Tasmania free of charge. Meanwhile, without the need of the driver having to quarantine for 14 days. Meanwhile, in Melbourne, Aaron coordinated the logistics and Alan Oshlak drove all over town in a commercial van gathering Tasmania's Passover goods from local stores and wholesalers. The van and its very precious cargo arrived safely in Tasmania the next morning, giving us plenty of time to distribute the goods around Tasmania's Jews. This is the job that my kids, Shalom and Yehudis, do best. Not only was this a real team effort, one that could only have happened with the assistance of the Melbourne Jewish community, but more importantly, this project clearly had the hand of God involved in every step of the way.
Thank you so much, Rochel. What an incredible story of unity and an amazing team effort and kindness from people like Senator Rebbetzins, Alan, around the Melbourne Jewish community, Bernard Dwyer, and your gorgeous children. Now, before you leave this evening, I've been told that you've filled your mikveh with 6 kilo ice blocks. And I just wanted to ask you, how many did it take to actually fill the mikveh?
Oh, thank you, Tali. Well, that's going to have to be a story for another time. But just to give you a heads up, it took 285 6-kilo ice bricks to fill up the mikveh in Tasmania, and many, many hours to place them all in, and even longer to melt it all. But thank you so much, Tali. That will have to be another time.
Thank you. I look forward to that. That's a lot of ice blocks. Now we're going to cross to Adelaide, where we're going to speak to Rabbi Yossi Engel. Rabbi Yossi originally came to Sydney from New York before returning to New York a couple of years later. But he never forgot Australia, and he was drawn back to Adelaide, where he has been for 21 years. After years of being the rabbi at the Orthodox shul there, he established the Chabad house, and he's the only traditional rabbi in the region. Rabbi Yossi, you're a person in a big city with a small Jewish community. How do you impact the broadest number of Jews, and how does one Jewish person impact another?
Great question, Tali. Thanks for the opportunity. The Talmud tells us a story of Rabbi Chia, who wrote Torah scrolls and used them to teach children. These children taught others, and Torah awareness spread. The effect was so far-reaching that the Talmud credits this Rabbi Chia with having preserved Torah tradition, no less. In our community, and I suspect in other Chabad communities, we try to harness the energy of community members, empowering them to reach out to others who in turn affect even more people. There are too many stories, so let me share a couple of stories, if only briefly. A Jewish boy by the name of Israel moves from the land of Israel to England with his family. He grows up, I think where you're from, is that correct? Okay. He grows up going to shul. He marries a non-Jewish girl and stays away from the religion for 40 years so that each doesn't impose their faith on the other and confuse the kids. He moves to Adelaide, and he and his wife are touched by the warm welcome that we shared. She is excited to convert. They keep kosher, Shabbat, he prays 3 times a day. However, it wasn't to last. One of their 3 children came from Perth and felt unwelcome in their newly Jewish home. So they pulled away from observance and moved out of town, and I didn't know where to. Let me share a seemingly separate story, but it wasn't separate at all. Joshua lives 3 hours away from Adelaide. He went to a Christian seminary to become a priest, but rejected the Trinity and thus rejected Christianity. The two couldn't work together. Years later, he discovered his Jewish heritage. We begin studying Torah on the phone once a week. As a pastry chef, he makes the whole town know that Purim is coming with Haman Tashin. Every Jewish festival knows that what the Jewish festival is a town of 9,000. Meanwhile, In a town of 9,000, he only has one true friend. A year after they met, these two friends find out that they're both the only two Jews in town. Joshua and Israel become good friends. It turns out, because Israel moved down there, it turns out that this is a match made in heaven. From that point on, Israel is teaching all the knowledge that he has, Hebrew, Torah, to Joshua, and Joshua is inspiring him to once again join his faith, join him for Shabbos, join him for festivals. Each uplifted the other with their unique blessings. You can't make this stuff up. That was one story of many. People join our phone and web classes in Adelaide from hundreds and even thousands of kilometers away. Each are leaders, that's the beautiful point. Each become leaders in their own towns. One couple housed visiting rabbis and arranged to build a Jewish cemetery. Another gathers children 400 kilometers away, west from us, in Eyre Peninsula, gathers children from afar to study Torah. A third welcomes Jewish travelers in their northern Victorian region. A fourth created a Sunday Hebrew school far away from here. One such story of people inspiring those close to them, I'll share one more. When more than 70 Jewish tombstones were desecrated in Adelaide in 1995, the community was obviously shaken up. An unobservant Jewish woman felt moved to attend the memorial service. While there, she saw the tombstone of her great-grandmother, whose Jewish name she carried. Instantly, she felt a deep sense of identification with her namesake, and in her heart and soul reconnected to her faith. She bought her daughter a Jewish book, the first book that she knew. A rabbi helped her. She got a storybook, a book about the lives of Talmudic sages. Excited about the Jewish way of life and their own Jewish identity, this young girl begged her mother to take her to synagogue. They began attending the liberal temple. When my wife Connie and I arrived from Brooklyn, I heard that the classic Hasidic work Tanya was printed in Adelaide some 14 years earlier at the behest of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and that the Rebbe specifically wanted a Torah teacher there. He paid for a teacher to fly to Adelaide from Melbourne on a monthly basis for 2 years to teach Tanya, to a few people, mind you. So when I came to Adelaide, naturally, I wanted to continue that now not continued, discontinued Tanya class. The mother in the story we mentioned before, the mother in that story of the family who was just rediscovered her Yiddishkeit, joined the Tanya class. As a psychiatrist, a very brilliant one, she truly appreciated the rich psychology and spirituality of Hasidic philosophy. She began to keep kosher, bought a house near the shul to keep Shabbos, and found her way to observance, to become Torah observant. What's interesting is her mother, the grandmother in this family, was touched by the beauty of her daughter's Shabbos table and Torah life. She rejoined the traditional shul and regularly attended classes, prayers, more, became very involved. Her grandmother, the great-grandmother in this family, for the first time in 70 years, joined her granddaughter for Rosh Hashanah. She started crying. This is how my mother made Rosh Hashanah. Her sister looked at her, a great aunt in the family. This is exactly how our mother made Rosh Hashanah. This same great-grandmother, when some family members came out against the young mother and her children in following tradition, the great-grandmother, who was the consummate professional, very private, usually very private about her faith, was surprisingly unequivocal on a sick bed in the hospital. She got strong. She turned to her granddaughter and she said, continue on your path. You're right. The others that are against you are not. My parents and grandparents lived this way, and they'd be so proud of how you are living in their way. I completely support you. The young girls in this family went to Chabad high schools. One even went on to study in the seminary in Israel. They married fine Jewish men and set up beautiful Jewish homes. The mother married a Hasidic man. She now teaches Tanya, writes articles on the web all over the world. They read her stuff, inspiring many others to follow in her spiritual journey. Where a neo-Nazi desecration led a Jewish mother back to her Jewish roots, only to then touch a child, her mother again, the grandmother and the great-grandmother, to find their way back home.
What an amazing story. Now we've seen two stories, how awful situations have actually created amazing, amazing outcomes. So thank you for sharing those with us. And also thank you for showing us how we can uplift and inspire each other, and for continuing your work in Adelaide, even when there are opportunities overseas and it means missing out on important things like your daughter's wedding in New York yesterday.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to cross to the sunny Sunshine Coast, and we're going to speak to Rebbetzin Esther Khutoresky, who moved there in January with her husband, Rabbi Engel, and her 2 boys. Esther grew up in Iowa, and Esther now helps and cares for whatever's needed in the community and creates a family for the community in the Sunshine Coast. Esther, welcome. Please, can you tell us about the differences between life growing up in Iowa and what life is now like on the Sunshine Coast?
Hi. Sunshine Coast is extremely different than the small town that I grew up in. I grew up in Northeast Iowa. I did not have a typical childhood. And just to give you an idea of what kind of childhood I had, the small town that I grew up in, it literally there's no traffic lights. My backyard overlooked cornfield for miles. And it's quite a very different place than growing up in a city. It's also very cold in the wintertime. It gets very cold, like minus 28 Celsius. And I'm pretty glad that I'm living in the Sunshine Coast now. I honestly never thought I would move to Australia. Moving on Rara here to the Sunshine Coast is and was both a very exciting and incredible journey, and of course still going through that. We're based in the Sunshine Coast, and we're here to service the Jewish community in the Sunshine Coast area and in the surrounding area. There's lots of Jews that live here. It's quite a big mix of elderly people living here, young people, lots of Israelis, lots of kids. And there's lots of opportunity to do things with the people living here. So we often have lots of guests for Shabbat meals. We're about to start a Hebrew school in the next few weeks, and we already got 15 kids interested and signed up, and there are plenty more that are interested, and we'll get them. And we're here to help out with whatever the community needs, any holiday, Purim, Pesach, whatever is needed here. Just to tell you what I personally do between running around my 2 little boys, I think if I pinpoint my job here and what I do, I think something that's really important. Am I supposed to turn my phone around? Is that better? Back? Yeah. Well, if I pinpoint this way. Okay, sorry guys, thank you. If I pinpoint what I do between running around with my kids, is that I think something that's really important here is that a lot of Jewish people that live here don't live close to family, and I think that I try really hard. We try here to be that family for people. Growing up in a small town, even like living very far away from all my family, all my grandparents and cousins and uncles all lived far away in Israel. And growing up in a small community, the small community was our family. Anytime something was going on, if someone had a bar mitzvah, if someone just gave birth, people always pitched in. You always felt like you had a family. And even though they weren't related to you by blood, but the love and warmth that they gave you literally made you feel like family. And that's what I'm trying to give over to people here. So I invite people over for dinner and meet up with friends and Jewish people and just in the park, just random small little acts to give that people a sense of family. And then often I just call people on the phone to see how people are doing and make sure people are okay and just tell them that I thought about them. There's this woman that I speak to quite often, and even though she's way older than me, she always appreciates when I call her and wish her a good Shabbos, and we have a little chat. And personally, I always enjoy our conversations. She always reminds me of my mom who lives far away in Iowa, and it's something small that I do. And of course, we're living here, we're a face of the Jewish people. We travel ever so often. A few weeks ago, we traveled to Bundaberg, about 2-3 hours away from here, and we met a couple Jews there, and we had a meal together, and we spoke about Jewish topics, and it was very inspiring for me, but I'm sure it was like way more inspiring for the people that are living there. They live in really far away from any vibrant Jewish community, and for them to see me and my husband and my 2 boys, to see a religious life happening is something very inspiring and something very special for them to see. And a week before that, we traveled to a place called Tuamba, and there's a family that we know there that we went to go visit them because they lost a loved one, and it was quite hard to go visit them, and I'm sure it was harder for them. It was something that is really was really painful for me to see. Was someone, I know that a lot of people are going through this, especially because of the restrictions, that people are not able to travel and join family members. I saw that it's something that's really hard, is not being able to be with family, especially is such a important moment in someone's life. And so we went to travel, we traveled there, and we tried a little bit to fill up that void and share a little bit of warmth and comfort to somebody who was in need. When I think about my move here to Australia, I honestly feel extremely humbled and privileged to be living here and being able to be here to help people and be there for people. I grew up in a very small town, and something interesting that I always used to do as a kid, anytime we traveled either to the mall or if we were flying in an airport, and we went to a zoo, it doesn't make a difference where we were. Like, as a kid, it was this natural thing that we're always looking around to see if there's other Jews there, even though like no one else is in the zoo, it's just you and your families, no other Jews for miles. We always used to look around, and sometimes, you know, it happened to be that a friend from my town was also near, like, oh my, it's amazing that we see another Jew in the zoo, it's so cool. And it's interesting because I feel like now as an adult, that's what I'm doing here, just of course not in that childish mind of mine, but here we're looking around and trying to find the Jews that live here and be a family for them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esther, and thank you for bringing your warmth and love to the local community, especially in these times of isolation, and for always looking out for Jews just like you did when you were a child growing up. Thank you so much. Now we're going to cross to Newcastle to speak to Rebbetzin Malki Rodal. Malki and her husband Yossi have spent the last 5.5 years directing Chabad of Rara and traveling our vast and beautiful country, supporting people that are all around in different remote areas. Last month, they moved to Newcastle, where they're going to settle as a permanent support and link for the Jewish individuals and the communities in the Hunter and Central Coast regions of New South Wales. Malki is also known for her part in Outback Rabbi's film, and she was the one who was impressively driving that mitzvah tank truck all around Australia. Malki, welcome. Please, can you tell us about the power of the Jewish soul and how no Jewish person is too far out of reach for you?
Hi, Tali. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Malki, can you turn your screen as well? Sorry.
I'm also sideways.
Perfect. Wonderful.
There we are. When we say that no Jew is too far, we absolutely mean it. And many of our stories highlight that. On the one hand, we have hundreds of incredible stories that you could say are coincidence or serendipitous, but we know it's hashgacha pratit. It's God's guiding hand orchestrating these meetings. And equally, we have plenty of stories of long trips where there were days that we met no one, or our attempts to find a Jew led to a dead end. And regardless of the outcome, our motto has always been and always will be that no Jew is too far. And why is that? Because we all have a Jewish soul. Some are blazing bright and others are a spark hidden under layers of family history. And along that vein, I wanted to share a story that illustrates this amazing power of the soul. So a couple of years ago, my husband and I were on a winter Rara trip, traveling the dusty roads of rural Victoria. We had spent several beautiful days meeting individuals and families in different little towns. And at each stop, we'd share our journey on Facebook for others to enjoy the light and the joy of Yiddishkeit being spread. One very cold morning, as we drove towards Bendigo, we got a comment on Facebook from a woman in Shepparton, and she was wondering, if we'd be heading her way. We private messaged her to ask her a little bit more about her interest, and we gently inquired as to her heritage. And she replied and said, "I think I'm Jewish, I'm just not sure." And our curiosity was piqued, and we debated whether now was the right time to go visit her. We had 2 little kids in the back of the car. We had limited days for this trip, and we already had a really packed itinerary scheduled. In the end, we couldn't look past the wonderful opportunity that had come our way, and we added Shepparton to the growing list of areas that we needed to visit. When we arrived at Chrissy's farmhouse, her 2 little boys were chasing their cat around the yard as she tried to encourage them to come back inside. And as I unbuckled my own little boys, I already liked her. She invited us in, and all the kids disappeared into the playroom, giving us adults a chance to chat. Chrissy explained that when she was brought up as a Christian, don't mind me, technical difficulties. When Chrissy explained that she was brought up as a Christian and attended a religious Christian school her whole life. Her mother was raised in a similar manner, and despite that, from a young age, she always had a feeling that the religious stuff didn't sit exactly well with her. And she figured she was just an atheist kind of person, and she left it at that. A couple of days before our meeting, Chrissy had collapsed on the couch after a really long day. Her kids were finally in bed. We could all relate to that. And she was mindlessly flipping through the channels on the television. She caught the tail end of the Outback Rabbis film that was being shown on TV that day, and she was absolutely mesmerized. Maybe I am Jewish after all, she began to wonder. She knew her grandmother had been Jewish in a past life, but here this rabbi on the film was saying that Judaism goes by your maternal your maternal lineage. So if her grandmother was Jewish, what did that mean about her? That night, she couldn't stop thinking about the film, and she wondered about what it meant. She decided to follow Chabad Arara on Facebook and just get a feel for these rabbis and what exactly they do. She didn't breathe a word of this to anyone because she felt kind of embarrassed. She felt silly about these ideas, and she knew that they were a Christian family for generations, so what was she thinking about? When a post about us being in the area popped up, Chrissy jumped at the opportunity. Maybe this was a sign that she was waiting for. Here was a rabbi and his wife who would be willing to just come and sit on the couch and have a chat. And so apprehensively, she left us a comment, and then here we were a couple of days later, sitting together, having a wonderful, friendly conversation about motherhood, about life, and about Judaism. Chrissy shared the heartbreaking story of her grandmother's life. As a young woman, she'd married the love of her life, a man who didn't share the same heritage as herself. And having been secular for several years, it never really bothered her grandmother. And she still held on to her tradition with pride until one day, after a very difficult pregnancy, she went into labor. And looking forward to meeting her firstborn child and becoming a mother, except the baby was born and the room was silent. And no one said a word as they whisked the baby away. She didn't even get to see the baby. She didn't even get to hold the baby. And the nurses in the hospital were nuns, and they treated her really insensitively as she cried for her baby and for the unfair loss. They said something that changed the course of her family. They said to her, "You brought this upon yourself. Your Jewishness is what caused this curse on yourself and your family. Had you joined the religion of your husband, this would never have happened." Broken, mourning, and vulnerable, this young woman took those words to heart and renounced her Judaism to live a life of Christianity. For generations, the souls of this woman, her children, and her grandchildren lay dormant and quiet, a small flicker of godliness hidden from view. And now, decades later, her granddaughter sat with a rabbi, her flickering soul yearning for connection. We left Chrissy with a few little pamphlets about different Jewish topics. We didn't want to overwhelm her or overload her with too much stuff. And we left with farewells and promises to be in touch. And we wondered, would she be in touch? Often people aren't. Would she take this further? Often people don't. Not 4 hours later, I got a message from Chrissy. She'd already devoured all the reading material we'd left her, and she wanted to know where she could get some more. That was the day we introduced her to Chabad.org, and she was hooked. That Friday night, she sent me a text, 2 beautiful Shabbos candles flickering in her home. and I cried. Tears of joy, tears of hope, tears of gratitude for the chance meeting that had brought two Jewish women together and had brought this Jewish woman home. I thought it might end there, and yet Chrissy's soul was on fire. The spark had ignited into a flame of passion and thirst for her heritage. And in the 2 years since our chance meeting, Chrissy has taken on a Jewish name. She now introduces herself as Dasi. She has a modest Jewish library in her home. She teaches her gorgeous children about the Aleph Beis, and she shows up for any and all opportunity to learn more and involve herself. Sorry. I'm lost. Apologies. Give me a second.
Malki, thank you so much. Just while you're looking for your place, thank you for the story and also for reminding us that the power of a Jewish soul is so strong no matter what happens and no matter how much time passes.
I just want to finish off, if that's okay.
Of course.
Dasi is on here tonight. So Dasi, l'chaim, thank you for your inspiration. I am honored to be a part of your life. To me, you are a reminder of the Jewish soul, that a Jewish soul is never extinguished, never forgotten. And when we promise that no Jew is too far, we really mean it, both in terms of distance, but also in terms of time. Every Jew is a diamond. Thank you.
Thank you, Malki, and thank you also, Dasi, for inspiring us all. We're now going to make our way north to Cairns, where we're going to speak to Rabbi Ari Rubin, who is the co-director of the Chabad Center for Jewish Life in North Queensland. He's also the first full-time rabbi to settle in North Queensland, although Jews have lived there for over 100 years. Rabbi Ari travels over 5 hours twice a month to give Torah classes in Townsville, besides all the other travel that he does, so he can make sure to reach every Jew in far North Queensland. Apparently, Rabbi Ari is also the architect of the world's first menorah that's actually made out of mangoes. Rabbi Ari, welcome. Please, can you tell us tonight how one can celebrate Jewish life cycles in a remote community?
Thanks, Tali. Yeah, that's true. The mango menorah was definitely a lot of fun. So yeah, the story of the Jewish story, the Jewish survival, is really the story of passing traditions on from generation to generation. And of course, most noticeable in that is how we celebrate and commemorate the various milestones in the Jewish circle of life. So in rural Australia, and specifically in rural Queensland here where we are, you have to have a lot of effort to be able to celebrate those milestones. There isn't the, pre-made weddings or the cookie cutter bar mitzvahs, things like that. You really need a lot of effort, to work hard to be able to have those celebrations. But, even going back historically, going to colonial times, we see the amount of effort, but yet it was incredible that they actually went through and tried to celebrate and commemorate every Jewish milestone, even up here, all the way to Cooktown. They would bring rabbis in at incredible cost to be able to do a Brit Milah or celebrations. In fact, we have stories of people traveling 7 or 8 weeks, going down south to be able to celebrate the Jewish wedding or to be able to do a bar mitzvah, things like that. And, there's, in this week's Torah portion, and actually in the Chittas that we're starting tonight, we see the verse, Am levadod yishkon, a nation that dwells alone. The famous verse. It's not a curse. It's really a declaration of reality. On the one hand, we all are, as Jews, spread out throughout the world. The thing that connects us is the fact that we're all doing the same customs. We're doing the same rituals. We're keeping the same mitzvot. We're doing the same Torah. When it comes to these celebrations, we are all in it together. We're all this aloneness. But in North Queensland, it takes on a whole different meaning. Because in North Queensland, they literally are alone sometimes. A lot of times, they're absolutely alone. It reminds me of the story that a friend of ours, one of our students, he passed across an old cemetery, and he sees this single grave with a gate around it. And he straight away took a photo of it and sent it to us because the writing on it was Hebrew. And we uncovered the story of this 24-year-old woman who was traveling for business in 1883, passes away in the middle of Hughenden, absolute middle of nowhere, here in North Queensland. And of course, they have to give her a Jewish burial, but you can't bury in a normal cemetery, a non-Jewish cemetery. So they buried her in the regular cemetery, but they created it as a Jewish cemetery by putting a gate around it. So it's their own separate cemetery. But think about it. She had no friends. She had no family. She had nobody there. Most normal cemeteries are filled with Jewish graves all around, even if they're not people you know, but at least there's something that you share in common. Here, this poor lady was buried in the middle of nowhere with nothing and nobody there. Look at us right now. We're all on this Zoom together from all over the country, from all over the world. Imagine if we could go back and tell those people what we have now, the power that we have to connect to each other. We have so much availability now, which I had no idea then. We are here in North Queensland to create a community for all the Jews that are spread out and don't have anybody else, don't have other areas. Of course, our student Daniel said some prayers on the grave, put a pebble down there, but who's going to be there to remember afterwards? Our mission is to make sure that there will never be a forgotten Jew. Today here in Cairns, we have a thriving Jewish community, thank God. We have a big community with lots of events, things happening all over. Just next week, this time next week, today next week, we have a family coming up from Bowen. They're traveling in the morning, 9 hours. They're going to come to us, do the bar mitzvah of their youngest son, and then stay the night, travel back the next day. We are here to make sure that there will not be any forgotten Jews, that the Jews, although they are alone in place and location, won't be alone in spirit and in through boundaries. When this family comes here to Cairns next week, they will not know a single other person in the place. We're the only people that they have a connection to. But yet, the community here are excited. They're looking forward. They're waiting for the bar mitzvah boy from Bowen to come so that he can read his portion of the Torah and that we can celebrate together. Why is that? Because we are all family. We are all one big family and we care about each other. Even if we never knew them, met them, we welcome them together, all together as one. Am levadod yishkon, we might be a nation that dwells alone, but we're a nation. We're a nation together. We are all in it together. We are all one. Please, God, we'll be able to continue in our mission to make sure that there will never be another forgotten Jew. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Ari, for making sure that there are no forgotten Jews and for the work you do. We'll all be thinking of the Bar Mitzvah boy this weekend, and I am excited to see pictures of your menorah and also what creative fruit you use for the next one. So I'll be waiting for that. Now we're going to cross to Perth to meet Rabbi Shalom White. Rabbi Shalom and his wife Odeya came to Perth 16 years ago from Israel to continue the work of the previous Chabad rabbis there. Together with their 7 children, they support the Jewish community in Western Australia and make sure that Jews in the most isolated city do not feel isolated. From teaching Aleph Beth to small children, lecturing to academics, performing weddings, brisses and funerals, Chabad Western Australia lights one soul at a time. Rabbi White, welcome. Now, can I ask you, you live in the most remote city in the world. I thought it was one of, but I've been told, no, it's actually the most technically remote city in the world. How did your family accept that when you moved there?
Thank you, Tali. Very funny that my family, or more correctly, my wife's family, didn't accept it too well. After I first meeting my wife and we were about to get engaged, so I had the very scary meeting that I met my father-in-law. And the first thing he said to me, he says, Shalom, I know that you're from Australia. If you're going to marry my daughter, you're not moving to Australia. It's too far away. To put it into perspective, my father-in-law goes and visits his mother every single day. All right, there's not a day that he doesn't go and have a cup of tea with her. And it's a very, very close family. And after getting married a year later with our newly born daughter, we moved to Perth. In the beginning, I told him that it's only for a year, but of course, we know that nothing is really for a year, and we ended up staying here for quite long. My father-in-law, once he had to give a speech at one of the dinners in Israel for Chabad, for Israel, and he said that he's given to Chabad, he's given to the Rebbe the most important things in his life. His two daughters. He has a daughter that's in Austria, and of course my wife Odea, that she's in Australia. And Australia being 30 hours flight from where they live is something which is quite difficult for him. But there's a very interesting story which took place in relation to Perth in that regard. Sadly, my father-in-law had a very bad lung problem in which he needed a lung transplant. And he needed to go around with an oxygen box. We couldn't, basically his life was very limited. And the doctor said that he needs to get a transplant very, very quickly. So we were looking into different places. The doctors here helped me look into Australia, and it was planned that he was going to go to India to be able to get this transplant just after Pesach. So this is going back a few years, 5 years. And surprisingly, just before Pesach, it was on the Rebbe's birthday. My wife receives a phone call from a father that they found a donor in Israel, and he's on the way to receive the transplant. So of course we barely slept that night. We said Tehillim and everything else. And thank God, the transplant went. The next morning I was sitting in my office getting ready for Pesach, and I received a phone call. One of the gentlemen that live here in Perth, he called me up and he said that last night my mother passed away. And he's not able to go to the funeral, so he feels very far. And whether we'll be able to do prayers at the synagogue. So of course I said yes. Spoke to him for a little bit, and I put down the phone. I called up my wife and I said, it's crazy, but I think we found the donor. The donor for your father is Josh Joseph's mother. She said, Shalom, you're crazy. I said, this evening I'm going to ask him and we're going to find out. That night in prayers, I asked him, I said, would by any chance of your mother being an organ donor? And he said she was, but he doesn't think that they were able to take anything because she was very, very old. She was 10 years older than my father-in-law. And I said, do me a favor. Ask your brother in Israel whether they were able to take anything. He comes in the morning and he says that 3 people's lives were saved. Someone was able to utilize the liver, and 2 people were able to receive the lungs. And so I said to him, I said, I think your mother gave my father-in-law one of those lungs, to which he said, he also thought you're crazy. We went and asked through the hospital, and they told us that they're not allowed to tell us any information, but there was only one transplant which took place that entire week, which ultimately means that his mother saved my father-in-law's life. And so at that moment, he felt unbelievably connected, because he realized that even though he lost his mother, but someone that's very close to him, his rabbi, he was able to be part in our life and to be able to continue life and to save someone's life, another 2 people as well, but in particular, someone so close to him. My father-in-law, afterwards, he was on the radio when he finally came out of the hospital, and they interviewed him about the story. And he said that it's in merit that my children went so far that in Perth, my son-in-law is the rabbi of the son of the donor that was able to save my life. And with this, we see unbelievable hashgacha pratis of being able to come and connect from the most remote city in the world, Perth, that there should be a rabbi and a congregant, that their parents have some unbelievable connection of a continuation of life, which is something which is quite amazing. And so we may think we're living in somewhere which is remote. They say that the world is quite big, but Hashem is a lot bigger, and Hashem comes and makes sure that we're all together and we're all united. There are a million other stories which we could share, but for that you're going to have to come to our Shabbos table to hear them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope, Rabbi White, we can come to your Shabbos table soon. But thank you. I have complete goosebumps from that story. And thank you for reminding us that no matter where we go, no matter how isolated or how far we are, Jews are connected in all the most remote places. We're always connected. So thank you. Now, as a special bonus, we're going to try, hopefully they will have enough Wi-Fi because they are on the road, to connect to Rabbi Izzy and Rabbi Mendel, who right now are on the road in their motorhome for Chabad of Rara. They are the Outback rabbis who visit Jews in really remote and rural places that don't even have enough Jews to have a small community, so that no person is left out. So hopefully we'll be able to cross to their motorhome now, and they'll be able to tell us about their day-to-day and whether all of the people they come across have a connection to Judaism.
Hello, hi everybody. We're so excited here in the middle of rural Australia to join everybody to speak, but we want to mention something very, very powerful. We have a special story that we're going to share with everybody that's going to bring out something very special about the Jewish soul. Now it goes like this. I'm gonna say a very long story, but I'm gonna say it very, very shortly. Yesterday, we visited a lady, a very old lady who has a remarkable story that I want to quickly share with you. She was born in Austria. She was born and raised by her grandmother, who was a devout Catholic, and she was born to a supposed Catholic family. When she was brought up, she was about 16, 17 years old. She joined the resistance, and she helped Jewish people. She helped Jewish people escape the war. She helped them be smuggled over the border. And helped almost 100 Jewish people survive the war. Very, very remarkable. And she lived an amazing life. Obviously, I can't share her entire story right now, but she lived an amazing life, but it wasn't a Jewish life. She happened to marry 2 Jewish men throughout her life, and she ended up here in Australia, in a very remote town, not close to any Jewish community. Now, the Rara boys, us that travel in our mitzvah tank to all these different towns, we're doing our rounds, and it was actually Rabbi Yossi and his wife Malki who came across this lady, and they visited her. She actually called them to ask to see, she wanted to speak to a rabbi, which was quite odd because she had pretty much nothing in her life that was Jewish, besides for the fact that she happened to marry 2 Jewish husbands that didn't really follow their faith. Now, the story, I'm going to say it very, very shortly, it goes like this. It was Hanukkah, and Rabbi Yossi bought a menorah to light. As they're lighting the menorah, Rabbi Yossi starts to sing the famous song that we sing after the menorah, Ma'osur. And as they sing the song, they watch this old lady, who was a very, very tough lady, someone who lived through the war, somebody who wasn't easily brought to tears. And they watch this lady start to bawl. And Yossi turns to her and says, what's the matter? Tell us your story. Why did you call us? Why did you call rabbis? Well, you obviously have what to share. So this lady started to explain how her grandmother told her. Her grandmother told her that even though she was brought up Catholic, she was really Jewish. She was Jewish all along. And hearing this, she was 91 years old when she finally decided somehow or another to follow, to listen to that calling in her soul, that calling that says that she's Jewish. At 91 years old, she decides to start following a Jewish life. And she reached out to Rabbi Yossi and the Arab boys, and she started getting closer in touch with her Jewish soul.
Now, this woman, Tina, who now likes to go by her Jewish name, Esther, she wanted to have something which is the right and the privilege of every Jew, a Jewish burial. But living out there in Jindabyne, which is a pretty remote place, Jindabyne has no Jewish cemetery. It's far from any other Jewish cemetery. There was a problem which Rabbi Yossi Rodal, Rabbi Feldman in Canberra had to deal with. Where would they be able to bury her when the time came? And so Rabbi Rodal arranged with the council in Jindabyne the Jewish section for the Jindabyne War Memorial Cemetery, and they allocated enough space for 40 plots in the cemetery. And that was several years ago, and no one was actually able to go to Jindabyne in the interim to consecrate it to be able to be used as a Jewish cemetery. So this morning, with some help of, some local Jewish residents in Jindabyne, we finally built and consecrated the first Jewish cemetery in Jindabyne. We fenced a small area. According to halacha, there's a special way to fence it, and we blew the shofar. We said the special prayers, different chapters of Psalms, some chapters from the books of the writings, and we consecrated the first Jewish cemetery. And now Esther will have that right, that privilege to be able to die as a Jew, finally at peace.
Now, I want to bring out a very, very powerful point. I want to share with everybody what this tells us. Here you have the story of a lady, of Tina. Tina Esther is the name that she got at 91 years old. Here you have a soul that for 91 years lay dormant, a soul that was, you could say, sleeping. But unlike a body, if you don't feed it, if it's malnourished, eventually it will die. Now, a soul is very, very close to that, but with an ample difference. The difference between a soul and a body is that that soul could be malnourished, but it will never die. That soul will always be there, only for a time or moments in time that somebody will come along and reignite that soul, reignite that spark that will wake it up. And it could be at 5 years old, could be at 10, could be 20, could be at 91 years old, no matter what. And you see in her life, there was times, why did she join the resistance? Why did she help Jewish people? Why did she marry 2 Jewish husbands? 1 Jewish husband's tough enough. 2 Jewish husbands? It's remarkable. You see that the soul's always pressing to surface, always pressing to get to the surface and show itself. And eventually that spark will come out.
And that's something that on our travels, we've had the great privilege traveling up the coast for weeks on the road, going to all kinds of places whose names we can't always pronounce. Sometimes we hadn't heard of these places before. And it just reminds me of the story about a week and a half ago. We met a guy living in a place called Millingandi, pretty far from, civilization perhaps. And since leaving England as a young teenager, he hadn't really had anything to do with his Judaism. And he sort of, if you will, forgot about it. His wife wasn't Jewish. And he lived there, Millingandi, just, minding his own business. And then one chilly night, we were in Eden, a little bit north of the Victorian border. And we see there's someone in a ute parked outside Coles. And as we were loading the shopping in our car, he's just looking at us. Now that look, and all the rabbis here probably know, that look that you get means one of 2 things. Either it says, I hate you and I want to kill you, or it says, I'm Jewish and I'd love to talk to you. And it was the I'm Jewish look. And this man tells us that he's Jewish. His father's a Holocaust survivor, and he's so glad we're in town. and he wants to introduce us to a friend of his, another Jew, this Jew who lives in Milingandi. And we went to Milingandi, we met this Jew, and he was going through a very rough time with the isolation of COVID, being away from his children. And, he was feeling very down. And after we spent the Shabbat with him, we spent several hours in him with his home, he had really brightened up. And just the effect of just saying hello to someone, coming to meet someone, was a really powerful thing.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Izzy and Rabbi Mendel. We want to have you on here all night, but unfortunately, we have the Chief Rabbi in South Africa waiting, so we're going to have to end it there, but we
Chief
definitely
Rabbi,
will hear from you again soon. So thank you for igniting the spark. And just to clarify, that is not the mitzvah truck that the boys are in now, but I did see that they were driving today. And thank you so much to all of our amazing local guests. It's so wonderful to know that wherever we travel around Australia, we have an amazing and warm community ready to greet us, especially now that travel around Australia hopefully will become a very possible thing very, very soon. Now we're going to cross to South Africa to speak to Chief Rabbi, Dr. Rabbi Warren Goldstein. Chief Rabbi Goldstein is the youngest person ever to be appointed in the post. In his 10 years in office, Rabbi Goldstein has launched and led so many revolutionary initiatives, and they've changed both the local landscape as well as actually the landscape of the entire world's Jewry. He's the architect of the Shabbos project, which has united Jews in over 465 cities through the keeping of one Shabbat together. He's also founded Sinai in Durban, perhaps the largest annual Torah convention of its kind. He's a qualified Dayan, and Rabbi Goldstein has published many books, including Sefer Mishpat Tzedek, Defending the Human Spirit and the Legacy. The Chief Rabbi also has a PhD in human rights and constitutional law and is a regular columnist for many different places, including the Jerusalem Post. Welcome, Rabbi Goldstein. Thank you so much for being here and for speaking with us tonight. Now, tonight, we've seen the breadth of engaging Jewish communities from all around Australia. But one thing that we really need to concern ourselves with is the length of engagement. Rabbi, can I ask you tonight for your advice in engaging the next generation?
Thank you. It's so lovely to be with you and with all of your viewers, and to be with the Jewish community of Melbourne and indeed all across Australia. I think this was just such a wonderful initiative, and thank you so much for inviting me to participate in it. And as I was waiting to come on, I heard some of these amazing and inspiring stories of shluchim and how they're reaching out to Jews all across Australia and indeed the world. And that's something which is truly inspiring. I think what is so important when reaching out to people is really a sense of inspiring everybody that we have tremendous power within us. We need to believe in ourselves. We often talk about having faith in Hashem. We also need to have faith in ourselves. And that means to know our own greatness. And that means to know that we are actually creators like Hashem, that we have a mitzvah to imitate Hashem. And part of that is to know that we can create the world in which we live. And how do we create ourselves is through the mitzvahs. And one of the most powerful mitzvahs, obviously, that has the power to create ourselves is that incredible mitzvah of Shabbos that has the power to bring Jews together. But all of our mitzvahs are Hashem's formula for really uniting and holding us all together and helping us to create who we are as people and make our world into a better place. In fact, our sages have this incredible phrase, this beautiful phrase where we are called upon to be shutaf l'Kadosh Baruch Hu b'ma'aseh bereishis, to be a partner with God in creation, to make this world into a better place, but to partner with Hashem to make ourselves into better people. And we do that through our mitzvahs. And I think that reaching the next generation is to reach with a message of hope and beauty of what Judaism has to offer and what Torah has to offer, and that it is not about pain and suffering and persecution, but it is about this incredible partnership with Hashem to make ourselves and our world so much better and into so much more. And I think when people feel empowered, and they have that sense that they can do things in the world, and they can do things in their own families, and they can do things in their own lives through the power of the mitzvahs, that is when that incredible spirit is ignited within people, and they feel a sense being complemented, that Hashem wants us to be his partners in creation, which is something truly remarkable and people find so inspiring. And I think that has to be a key message of it, a sense of personal empowerment, a sense that we're all leaders, a sense that each and every single one of us has the power to change ourselves and the people around us and to make a difference. We don't have to wait around for somebody else to do that for us. We can do that for ourselves. As the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, Im ein ani li mili, if I'm not for myself, we'll do it. I have that power to change my life. But also, kishani la'atzmi mani, if I don't reach out to others and make the world into a better place and share that light, what am I? We need to reach beyond ourselves. And I think that it's really about each person finding that mission and connecting with Hashem's mitzvahs, which unleashes the tremendous power of what it means to be a creator in this world. I can share more with you. I don't know if you have more questions or I should continue. I don't know what the format.
Yeah, definitely, please continue.
Okay, good. So what I wanted to share with everybody, and that is really the sense of what it means to be a creator. And what does that mean? Really, to be a creator with Hashem means that we mold our lives, and the mitzvahs give us that framework. And if we take, for example, the Mitzvah of Shabbos, which has such beauty and such power to resonate and connect with people, it's really about nurturing our most precious relationships. The three most precious relationships that we have is our relationship with Hashem, our relationship with the people around us, and our relationship with ourselves. Those are three separate relationships: how we relate to God, how we relate to the people around us, and how we relate to ourselves. And all of Torah is contained and directs us on those three relationships, but especially Shabbos. Because when it comes to Shabbos, it's the day that we have where we can focus on Hashem and be aware of his presence. When we say the words of the Kiddush, we acknowledge the presence of Hashem. We feel his presence in our lives. We acknowledge him as the creator of the world. On Shabbos is a time when we are with our families and with our loved ones and with our communities. And it is that sense of bonding that we draw from those relationships where we can be fully present in the relationship and feel the people and connect with the people in the deepest possible way. But it's also an opportunity to connect with ourselves, because sometimes we are so busy and there's so much distraction and so much going on in the world around us that is seeking to grab our attention that we forget who we are in all of this. And we have to reconnect and really touch the essence of who we are as a person. In fact, there's an amazing passage in the Gemara where the Gemara says that if, for example, a person loses their temper, it's as if they've worshipped idols. Because what is idols? An idol is a strange god. In the Hebrew, it's avodah zarah. It is the worship of a strange entity. And actually, what Rav Shlomo Walby explains on that Gemara, he says this: it means that we become estranged from ourselves. When we leave a path of goodness and we lose control of ourselves and we do something which is not true to who we really are, we become estranged from ourselves. He in fact talks so beautifully. He says if you want to capture the essence of what the entire Torah is all about, it's captured in two Hebrew words, olam hayedidus, the world of loving friendship. That the Torah itself is a blueprint and a formula for how we can nurture relationships with God, with our fellow person, and indeed with ourselves. So there's a sense of integration and wholeness in our lives, and that we are held together by that force that connects us with all around us, and it gives us a formula to nurture each one of those relationships. And we need to be true to ourselves. So we can't be estranged. We don't want to be estranged from Hashem. We don't want to be estranged from the people around us. He points out fascinating, the Hebrew word for cruelty is achzar. And if you see inside that word is the word zar, which means stranger. To be cruel to another human being is to view them as a stranger, to view them as another, as an other, as someone who's distant from us. It's only when we connect with everyone that we have a sense of unity and togetherness. And only when we connect with ourselves, we have a sense of unity and togetherness, even with ourselves and with Hashem. All of the mitzvahs are a blueprint for creating and nurturing these three relationships. And indeed, Shabbos, more than ever, is a mitzvah which holds all of these relationships together. And that's why, people have often said, how did the Shabbos project spread all over the world? And it's actually, it's in more than 1,500 cities in 100 countries all around the world. And I'm so honored that the Jewish communities of Melbourne and Sydney and Perth, and indeed all over the country, and even all of the outlying places in Australia have been such amazing partners in the Shabbos project. And people say, what has been the magic and the secret of the Shabbos project? And to me, it's very simple. The secret of the Shabbos project is Shabbos, because Shabbos is the most incredible gift. It's the only mitzvah that the Gemara, the sages of the Talmud, referred to as a gift, as a matan, as a gift from Hashem. So it's the gift that holds our relationship together with Hashem, with the people around us, with ourselves. It unifies all of Am Yisrael, and that is our incredible gift. So my message to everyone this evening is to say that let's all stand together as Am Yisrael, as the Jewish people all over the world. Let us recommit ourselves to this mission of nurturing and holding these precious relationships, our relationship with Hashem, our relationship with each other, and our relationship with ourselves. All of the mitzvahs and the entire Torah is a formula for how to nurture these three relationships. And Shabbos, more than ever, is the force of unity that holds it all together, that brings us together in a world of loving friendship. It's been such an honor to be with you and all of the members who've joined today and part of the community. And just may Hashem bless Australian Jewry to continue to thrive and to grow in strength. And may Yiddishkeit grow and Jewish unity grow. And thank you so much to the entire community for your continued partnership and support in so many things. It's an honor to partner with you. And may Hashem bless us all and our entire world with health and with healing.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Goldstein. Now, I've had quite a lot of questions coming through. If it's okay, could I please just ask you a few of them?
Yes, sure.
Question, thank you so much. One of the questions is, was there a moment where you decided that about the Shabbat project, or how it actually came about?
It was actually a process. I think firstly, all ideas come from Hashem. This is something my wife and I spoke about a lot. We often debated and discussed, how do we bring Shabbos to the Jewish community in South Africa? That's what we initially wanted to do. I had also an interesting conversation with Professor Dan Ariely and other conversations, and it percolated, and then Hashem puts ideas in your head and guides you, and I could feel the presence of Hashem guiding us. But I remember specifically discussing with my wife in the first year in 2013 that we just wanted to do it in South Africa, and we never thought anything beyond that. And we thought, well, will it even work in South Africa? And I remember my wife saying to me, well, if only 10 Jews will keep Shabbos because of the Shabbos project that year, it would be worth all the effort. So we said, fine, let's just do it. You can't fail. I mean, if one Jew keeps Shabbos because of it, it's worth the effort. So we did that, and then the community in that year just embraced it with such warmth and energy and heartwarming acceptance that then it ignited and inspired the entire world, and then it gathered its own momentum, and I put a team together, and then we reached out. But the power has come from volunteers on the ground. There've been amazing people who have driven and put so much energy into this. All over the world and including in Australia in such a magnificent and special way.
It's amazing. I mean, 465 cities is so huge. Another question that's come through is, can you tell us a little bit about Nelson Mandela's relationship to the Jewish community?
Yes, sure. I think also just on the numbers, it's more than 100 countries and 1,500 cities actually.
Oh, wow. That's a lot more than we thought. That's huge.
All over the world. Thank God. Nelson Mandela, there was a very special bond between him and the Jewish community in South Africa. I had a very beautiful interaction with him, just before I started as chief rabbi. I took a copy of a children's book on his life story, Long Walk to Freedom, and I took it to him, and he asked him to inscribe it to my eldest son, Mordechai, and so to Mordi we call him Mordi, and Nelson Mandela wrote in the book, he said, to Mordi, a future great leader of the world. And of course, my wife agreed completely with President Mandela on that point. But on a truthful note, it opened my eyes to what made him a great leader. One of the things that did, apart from obviously his famous powers of forgiveness and spirit of forgiveness and generosity of spirit, but also that he saw greatness in every person, and that greatness he saw in the people around him, and that greatness uplifted him, and it uplifted all of the people around him.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And I just want to direct everyone, because I'm sure that everyone has so many more questions for you and would love to hear much more of your insight, to your website, which is www.chiefrabbi.co.za. I've been on there a lot this week, and there's so many amazing things. And thank you for reminding us about the key to a vibrant future for world Jewry, and how to be proactive and how to create it with our unified values, which is really something we've done for thousands of years. And it's something that I've heard you speak about before as well, how we've endured and we've prospered, even though many of the great empires that have tried to destroy us have fallen. So thank you so much. And I will definitely be on your website later on to hear much more. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. And can I say this for people who want to get involved as volunteers for the Shabbos Project for this year, to go onto the Shabbos Project website as well, shabbosproject.org or shabbatproject.org. We call it Shabbos and Shabbat. It's all the same thing, as long as we keep it and celebrate it. It doesn't matter how you say it. So, we'd love more partners and more people to get involved. So reach out, and we'd love to connect with you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Goldstein. Now we are going to speak to Rabbi Shais Taub, who is a mystic and soul doctor to thousands. Rabbi Taub is a world-renowned expert in overcoming addiction and in transforming one's life for the better. His latest work is titled God of Our Understanding, Jewish Spirituality and Recovery from Addiction, and it's been praised by Rabbi Abraham Tversky, MD, as a masterful elucidation on the subject of recovery. Rabbi Taub, thank you so much for being here tonight. Now, right now, we are living in really unprecedented times where many are faced with anxiety and personal challenges. And we've seen that even though sometimes things can look like they're improving, they're not. We've seen that in Victoria at the moment, where many suburbs here are now being locked down. And this has caused anxiety for people in Victoria, as well as for people all around Australia who are now fearing that that might happen. Can you share with us some of your insight into dealing with anxiety and stresses about things that are beyond our control?
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. First of all, I don't know if I should say good evening or good morning, because I'll give you a little look at that. See that? That's the sun shining outside. That's in New York, 6:42 a.m. Okay. So I'll say good morning and good evening. First of all, it's interesting. I wasn't really planning on mentioning this, but I've been listening and hearing the amazing stories that everyone is sharing, and also what Rabbi Goldstein just shared. And there's a theme that very much connects to the theme that I was asked to speak about. I'm speaking about, of course, on a personal level, going from surviving to thriving, dealing with anxiety in our personal lives. But a theme that's come across in pretty much everyone that I've heard on this program this evening/morning is about the amazing resilience of the Jewish people. So I think before we speak about on an individual level, I just want to remind us where we come from. They say, it's an old joke, that the scientists came out and they said that there's going to be a flood that's going to destroy the entire world in 3 days' time. Okay, by the way, if people are going to say, I thought that God promised after Noah's flood that he would never, yeah, I know, this is just a joke. Just a joke, don't worry, it's just the setup for a joke. Anyways, so they come out and they say there's going to be a flood in 3 days' time, it's going to destroy, the whole world's going to be underwater, and that's it. So the Pope comes out and he says to the whole world, you have 3 days to be saved. And then the Dalai Lama comes out and he says, you have 3 days to seek enlightenment. And the chief rabbi of Israel comes out and says, we have 3 days to learn how to live underwater. So, I mean, every joke has a little truth and every truth has a little joke. Where others see catastrophe and insurmountable disaster, the Jewish people see possibility, even if that possibility is absolutely illogical and incomprehensible. And there's a very logical reason for our illogical position, which is our entire existence is illogical. It doesn't make sense that a tiny nation is the only nation from its time of inception, from all of the nations, that existed in the times when the Jewish people came into being. They're gone. No, none of them are here today. And on top of it all, we were persecuted, we were brutalized, we were targeted for mistreatment by the greatest superpowers in the world throughout history. They're gone, we're here. That doesn't make sense. That's inexplicable. And if you think about how many junctures there were in history where Jewish survival was on the brink of absolute collapse, and how many times, I mean, imagine you flip a coin and if it comes up tails one time, that's it, you're gone. And what are the odds? I'm just saying, statistically speaking, that a tiny nation that is targeted for persecution by every superpower, what are the statistical odds that they would still be here? It's like flipping a coin over and over again, hitting heads every single time, hundreds of times, thousands of times. So our entire existence is illogical and defies rational explanation. There's a story, Frederick the Great, the king of Prussia. He was an enlightened despot. So he once asked his advisor, he says, I'm not a religious man, so I don't want you to quote the Bible to me, but I would like a proof that I, as a non-religious person, could accept a proof of the existence of God, says Frederick the Great to his advisor. So the advisor said, famously, Your Majesty, the Jews. Like, you want a proof of God, the existence of the Jews, because there's no rational, logical explanation why a people like that should still be here. So before I begin speaking about going from surviving to thriving on an individual level, I just want to make sure we all understand that the precedent has been set and that we come from a long line of people who did not just survive, but were able to thrive. And our existence is miraculous. And our existence is a testimony to the presence of God in this world. That God not only created the world, but continues to conduct all of the affairs of this world. And we are the proof. So that's just something to begin with and to keep in mind before we even begin to look at our own lives. I think sometimes having a context is very helpful. Okay, and I want to go back to this. We'll see how much time I have. I want to go back to this point also, but let's move on for the moment, for the time being, and talk a little bit about, as you said, how to deal with things that are beyond our control. It's sort of a paradox, an oxymoron, if you will, like dealing with things out of our control. Well, by definition, we can't really deal with them. So then what is there to do? There's a story about a rabbi. I'll give you a little bit of the setting in the background. There's a Hasidic dynasty from the Ukraine called Husyatyn. There's a town, Husyatyn. And it was the Husyatyn Rebbe, the Rav of Husyatyn. They relocated during the interwar years to Central Europe, to Vienna, Austria. Now, Vienna, Austria, especially during that time, 1930s, was very cosmopolitan, very modern, and there wasn't really a religious Jewish community there. So you have this Hasidic rabbi from Eastern Europe, from the Ukraine, living in cosmopolitan 1930s Vienna, and he's walking down the street, and somebody saw him. It happened to be a reporter from a newspaper. So this journalist saw him and said, "Who is that interesting-looking person?" So they said to him, "Well, that's the Husyatner Rav, and he is not just a regular Rabbiner, in German, Rabbiner, rabbi. He is a Wunder Rabbiner, a wonder rabbi." So that caught the journalist's attention. He says, "A Wunder Rabbiner, a wonder rabbi? Well, I've never met one of those. I would very much like to meet a Wunder Rabbiner, a wonder rabbi." So they arranged a meeting. So the journalist sits down with the Husyatner Rav, and he says, "They tell me that you are a Wunder Rabbiner, a wonder rabbi. Could you tell me what that is? What is a Wunder Rabbiner, a wonder rabbi?" So the Husyatner Rav says, "Okay, all right, let me explain it to you like this. First, you have a regular rabbi, and he controls a congregation, a synagogue. Then you have a city rabbi, the Stadt Rav, like you say in Yiddish, and he controls an entire city, a whole town. And then you have chief rabbi, and he controls an entire country. And then you have the Wunder Rabbiner, the wonder rabbi, and he controls himself." As I said, every joke has a little bit of truth, and sometimes through jokes, especially as Jews, especially when we have a big truth, sometimes we say it in a humorous way. The idea of being a Wunder Rabbiner, of controlling yourself, can be the most difficult, the most challenging task of all. We all want to control the world, but the most demanding and conversely, the most rewarding effort is in self-control, self-mastery. And sometimes we get ourselves distracted with things that are beyond our control, thinking that that's where our power is, and the truth is, it's the opposite. Our power is when we focus on our immediate situation and our reactions to things, our behaviors, the way we speak, the way we behave, and not the big world around us. They tell a story about in the early days of communism in Russia, after the revolution, they used to send out these indoctrinators to indoctrinate the masses into communism. So they had one of these fellows, sort of like a traveling preacher, except teaching communism. And he goes to a town, a little small farming town, a farm village, and he's preaching about communism to the crowd there. A bunch of farmers, the audience. So at one point, the communist indoctrinator says, "Comrade, I want to make sure you understand communism." So he asks a little old farmer, he says, "Comrade, if you have 2 cows, what do you do?" So he says, "If I have 2 cows, I keep 1 cow and I give 1 cow to the party." He says, "Very good, comrade. That is correct. Okay. Comrade, if you have 2 goats, what do you do?" The little farmer says, 2 goats, I keep 1 goat and I give 1 goat to the party. And the communist indoctrinator, "That's very good, comrade. That's correct. And comrade, what do you do if you have 2 chickens?" And the farmer's silent. "How do you do if you have 2 chickens?" Silence. "Comrade, 2 chickens." And he sees this farmer's hesitating, doesn't want to answer. So the communist says, "Comrade, I don't understand. I said, what do you do with 2 cows and you're ready to right away to give away one of your cows. I said, what do you do with 2 goats? Right away you're ready to give away one of yours. Now I'm talking about 2 little chickens. 2 little chickens? And now you're hesitating? What's the difference now?" He says, "You know the difference? I really have 2 chickens." He didn't have goats, so he was giving them away, no problem. Chickens he had, and that was painful. That was challenging. So what's the point here? The point is that it's very easy to have an opinion about world issues and to deliberate and pontificate about the big things in the world and governments and policies and, but it's a distraction, because where we really need to struggle and where the real work and hence the real growth is in the two chickens. And each one of us knows what that means. But it means whatever it is that we really have, whatever it is that we're really dealing with in our lives that we actually have control over, which again is our reactions to things and our beliefs and what we say and what we do. That's where we are masters, or at least potential masters, and can become a wonder rabbi, a wunder rabbiner, instead of chasing things that are beyond our control. So let's speak about this just a little bit more precisely. There's a Talmudic idiom, or I'll tell you in Hebrew, then I'll translate. It's just a one-liner, so it's not too much Hebrew, but Hakol bidei shamayim, chutz miyirat shamayim. Everything in the hands of heaven, except for one's awe of heaven. What does that mean? It's a pretty categorical statement. I mean, it's like everything, all. Everything is in the hands of heaven, except for one's awe of heaven. What does that mean? It means the way that God runs the world, not my business. Not my business. The way I react to the way that God is running the world, that's completely my business. The way running the world, not under my control. The way I react to the way that God is running the world, completely under my control. Where do I find power? Where do I find the potential to actually choose and make a difference and make a change? Is not in how the world treats me, but how I react to the way I'm being treated by the world. And the first rule, and Rabbi Goldstein alluded to this. He mentioned how our sages say that when someone becomes angry, it's like idol worship. The first rule is to realize that every single thing that's happening, whether we understand it or we don't, is orchestrated meticulously by a loving and wise and powerful creator who knows exactly what's right for each of us for right now. And even when we don't see the plan, even when we see why it is the way that it is, we need to know that everything is exactly the way it needs to be for now, for right now. One of my favorite stories, and I'll tell you right now, it's not the kind of story that people normally like. So why am I telling it? Because it's one of my favorite stories. I think it is my favorite story. And I'll tell you why it's not a story people normally like. There's no action. There's no conflict. There's no drama. It's just a bunch of people talking. But to me, it's the most profound story. And it's a story, every time I tell it and every time I hear it out by the profundity of it. The story is like this. Don't get excited. Like I said, there's no car chases. There's no... Not an exciting story. It's a deep story. And it's a short story, too. Stories like this. In the court of the Maggid of Mezrich, who was the successor of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov was the father of the movement. His successor was the Maggid. So the Maggid had 120 students. And among those students were basically the founders of all the Hasidic dynasties. So you can imagine the discussions that took place in that yeshiva. All of these greats, these all-stars of the Hasidic world. One such discussion took place between the Alter Rebbe, who we call the Alter Rebbe in Chabad, the Balatanya, Reb Shner Zalman, Levi Yitzchak Berditch, and Pinchas Koretzer. So the discussion was, what would you do if you were God? So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak first to speak. He says, if I were God, I would create the world with more loving kindness. So the world should be a gentler place. Next was Reb Pinchas. Reb Pinchas said, if I were God, I would create the world with more severity, with more judgment, so that wicked people wouldn't be able to prevail. And then they looked to Reb Shneir Zalman, and he said, and if I were God, I would create the world exactly as God is creating it right now. That's it. That's the story. One of my favorite stories. If God were me, God would create the world the way I would create it, the way I, with my finite understanding, would create the world. But if I were God, meaning if I had all power, all knowledge, all goodness, what would the world look like right now? Apparently just the way that it looks right now. But how could a perfect God create imperfection? That's part of the perfection. He's involving us to be partners. That there's a process, and the process involves a world that needs healing. So the world is exactly the way to, with its imperfections, with its problems, it is exactly the way that it needs to be right now, for now. And remember, there's a big difference between faith and fatalism. Fatalism means this way now. Oh, it's always going to be this way. There's nothing we can do. Faith means it's this way now, for now, just for this moment. And stick around, keep your eyes open, because God's got a big wide hand. He can do anything at any moment, and be present, show up for each moment, and see what each moment brings. This moment is this moment. The next moment is a whole different moment. And when we're not fearful of it, when we're not afraid of it, because we realize, somebody said to me once, every moment is a gift. That's why it's called the present. When we realize that God is creating this moment exactly as it needs to be created at this moment, we can show up for it without fear and actually be present in it. And then what happens? What happens when I show up present in the moment, where I'm not retreating, I'm not escaping, I'm not numbing myself, I'm not distracting myself, I'm actually here in the present, in the here and now? That's powerful, because then I can actually make choices. Then I can actually exercise self-mastery and do the things that I have the ability to do. So let me put it very simply. When I'm in my head and I'm thinking about all sorts of doom and gloom and all sorts of things going on in the world that I have no control over, I have no power. I get out of my head and I show up in the moment and I look around me and I see, what is the mitzvah? What's the next right thing I can do right here, right now? What's a behavioral choice that I make right now? What's a reaction that I can have right now? Now the power comes back to me. Or I should state it a little bit differently. I tap into the power that I already have. So remember, stay present. Fear is the enemy. Faith is the antidote to the fear. Or somebody wants, fear is an acronym, false evidence appearing real. When fear is fear is based on conception of reality. It's based on a false premise. But when we have faith, when we know that the moment is the way the moment needs to be, that we are enough. What we need to have for this moment. And we show up to the moment. And we don't try to think about the way other people should behave, or the way the world should be, or the way women should be, or we just focus on being a wonder rabbi and mastering ourselves and our behaviors and our choices, even though that's the hardest thing in the world, because that's our two chickens. That's where it really hits home, to make choices that we really have the power to make. Then there's this shift, there's a huge shift. We go from being a victim and being reactive to being the hero of our story and being proactive, making choices and finding our power. Okay, I said I wanted to go back to a point that I made earlier, and then I know that there was a request to take questions, so I don't want to use up all my time monologuing over here. But I just wanted, we'll Q&A in a moment if that's what you'd like to do. But I just want to go back to one thing that I started off speaking about before, when we're speaking about coming from a long line of miracles. Each one of us in this world today, every Jew who draws breath, who walks this earth, is a living miracle and a testimony to the power of God in this world. I just wanted to add a thought, and that is that the world has been turned upside down, and everybody is asking, what is normal anymore? What, and will we ever go back to normal? And my answer to that is, I sure hope not, because we Jews were never normal, and we never looked for normal. We were always crazy. Always. Because from the time of the ancient world, where the world was a world, and where we take for granted, we live in a very safe world today. We live in a very prosperous world today. The world poverty is lower than it's ever been. Disease is lower than it's ever been. There are less wars today than there's ever been. We live in a very safe and very prosperous world. The ancient world was a very, very dangerous and dark and frightening place. And at that time, we Jews were saying that not only it's possible, but we are going to bet the farm on the idea that the world could become perfected and that there could be some prosperity, not just for the Jewish people, but for all humanity. That was a radical idea. That was a crazy idea. And we never abandoned that idea. There's a word in English that describes this kind of craziness. The word is quixotic, Quixotic. And it actually, the etymology of the word is it comes from Spanish. It comes to English from Spanish. It's actually a proper noun. It's a name of a fictional character. People who know literature know that the Shakespeare of Spanish was Cervantes. And he wrote the Don Quixote, the famous novel Don Quixote. And Don Quixote was this was he a visionary or a madman? Was he a fool, or was he a saint? He had these big dreams. And so Quixote, the word Quixote, became the word quixotic, which means somebody who is like a big dreamer, like Don Quixote. And there was a Broadway musical, The Man of La Mancha, and the song was to dream the impossible dream, right? To dream the impossible dream. And that was really the whole idea of Don Quixote. So I just found out recently from a professor of Spanish literature that, and then I was floored by it, but then it made total sense to me, that there's a very strong theory. I don't know if they learned this in Australia, but in America grew up learning in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. You guys learned that in Australia? Okay. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. I want to tell you something. In 1492, else happened. The Spanish expulsion. They kicked the Jews all out of Spain. Okay. That's why many of the crew, Columbus's crew on the Nina Pinta and Santa Maria were Jews and crypto Jews. There's a very strong theory that Cervantes was a crypto Jew. And when I heard that, I said, this makes total sense, because he wrote the character Quixote, who's this wild dreamer, from whom we get the word quixotic, which means a wild dreamer who dreams the impossible dream. So if he was a Jew, what could be more Jewish than that? So here's what I want to say. The whole world's turned upside down. We're never going back to normal. Beautiful. We Jews were never normal. We never wanted normal. We wanted the impossible dream. And now when the whole world realizes the whole status quo is in upheaval, and people are questioning everything that they thought was normal, everything they thought they could rely upon, maybe we can't rely upon. And on a very basic life, people's lives are upended. Things that our daily routine is upended. Everything is sort of in flux. That's perfect. This is a time for the Jewish people to stand up and say, guys, we've been through it all. We've been through the ups and the downs, everything, the whole gamut of human history. And we're here. And not only we're here, we're smiling and we're happy and we're giving this thing over to our children. You know, we're again, the title was not just surviving, but thriving. We're not here as victims. We're here as heroes. We're here joyfully and triumphantly. Okay, that's a message the whole world wants to hear right now. So the Jewish people, as a light unto the nations, we need to step up, and each one of us, I'm not talking about rabbis, I'm saying every single one of us has to feel empowered right now. And this is one of your two chickens. I mean, this is something you can do. Okay, I'm not telling you to buy advertising time during the Super Bowl or whatever the Australian equivalent of that is. Okay, I'm saying the people that you come in contact with anyway. It's a big world today, or it's a small world today, I guess, because with technology, social media, your sphere of influence can literally be global. Any person today that can have a global influence. Whatever by divine providence is your sphere of influence. People want this message that we're not going back to normal. We don't want normal. We want to dream the impossible dream. World peace, safety, prosperity, health, security for every single human being. Not only is that attainable, but it's our expectation, and it's the dream that we have clung to for millennia. And we, the Jewish people, are the living miracles who are proof, just as we are here and we are a reality, so too our dream will become a reality. Okay, I'll turn it over to questions if that's...
Thank you so much, Rabbi Taub, and thank you for inspiring and empowering us and reminding us that we really are equipped to deal with everything that's going on, because as you've said and you reminded us, we are a people built on miracles and challenges throughout our whole history. Now, there are so many questions that lots of people have for you tonight, so hopefully we'll be able to get through quite a few of them. Can you recommend, now you've already done this by saying self-control, staying present, looking at your reactions, your belief, what you say and do, doing mitzvahs right then, and keeping the power we have. But are there any other simple
tips? You just said my whole talk in 30 seconds. That was it.
I was taking notes for myself and everyone. But can you tell us, is there anything else you can recommend when anxiety does creep in? Is there any simple tools and tips that you can do in that moment, apart from those things, to quickly curb it?
Breathe. Like, no joke, breathe. Because, you know, when God sent Moses to take the Jews out of Egypt, and he said, guys, we're going. And it says that they couldn't hear him because of kotzer ruach, which means shortness of breath. When literally when we are stuck in a negative loop and we're catastrophizing and we don't see any way out, we can't breathe. And sometimes when we're panicking and we're locked, you need to just take a big, deep breath, like as deep as you can. You feel your lungs stretch and let it out. And it's also something to me, I mean, this is like a little bit of a meditation, but everything's about surrender, right? Because God is in control of the world, and I need to surrender to that. I need to control what I can control, but at the same time, you know, it's that paradox of surrendering to gain control, to go in order to get a grip. So the surrender is so important. When you breathe in, as long as you can hold your breath, you will eventually have to let it out. And there's something literally like a catharsis when you let out the breath, and just that letting it out, letting it go, letting it leave you. Every time you sigh, in Yiddish we call it krechts. That itself is a little meditation of let go and let God. Let go and let God. So that's a very powerful tool. And Yeah, I do it all. I do it hundreds of times a day, actually.
That's a great one, because we can also make sure that we can all do it at any moment, wherever we are, whatever's going on, we can just stop and do it. Now, mental health is something that we all speak about and are educated about and read about currently. Are there examples in the Torah that come to your mind of people that struggled with mental health?
You know, that's a great question. And I'll tell you something. All of us struggle with mental health. I think that's an important thing for us to realize. First of all, because it destigmatizes it. Mental health isn't something that only some people struggle with. All of us struggle with it to some degree. So if you ask me, like, is there a biblical persona that I would use as an example of struggling with mental health? Well, you know what? I think the most powerful one, the most helpful one, is Adam and Eve, because first of all, all of us are descended from them, and their experience really sort of created an embedded pattern in the human psyche, which we all inherited. And I think that's very important to realize, that there's a certain amount of psychological issues that is just part and parcel of the human condition. Now, specifically, what is it? Just, not to leave you hanging. When Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, what happened? They ate from the tree of knowledge, they got knowledge. What does that mean? That they became editors of Wikipedia. They could win at Trivial Pursuit. What was the knowledge? Well, we know what the knowledge was, because right after they ate from the tree of knowledge, they became ashamed of their nakedness. Now, before they were naked, they were not ashamed. Like a baby runs around without a diaper, and there's nothing shameful about it at all. But then they became ashamed. What was the knowledge they gained? The knowledge was self-awareness. And self-awareness is the root of all psychological dysfunction. Everything is ego. Everything is about ego. There's a Hasidic parable about the ego. They say that the angel of death came to God and he complained about his name. He said, "My name's too scary. People hear, the angel of death. Oh, they run away." But see, the Talmud says the angel of death actually, he's an angel, and his job is to mess people's lives up, making them make bad decisions that are gonna, get them punished. So the angel of death tells God, he's like, I tell people my name and they run away from me. So I can't do my job, which is to triple up and entice them to make bad decisions to ruin their lives. So how can I ruin somebody's life if they won't even talk to me? So God says, okay, no problem. You're right. The angel of death is too scary. Call yourself the evil inclination. So he says, okay, fine, no problem. So he tries it out. For all, he comes back to God and says, you know what? This is not good, because evil inclination, it has the word evil in it. So people realize, that I'm up to no good. So that doesn't work. So he says, okay, call yourself. He says, I have a name for you. Call yourself Satan. Satan means the adversary. He says, okay, let me try it out. Comes back. He says, God, they ask me what it means, and I tell them it's a Hebrew name. Well, what does it mean? Adversary. Adversary. I thought you were with me. You're against me. Get out of here. So he says, all right, I got a different name for you. Okay, it's almost cute. It's almost like a fluffy, cute little name. Call yourself, and the Hasidim came up with this name. Call yourself Animal Soul. Animal Soul. It sounds a little more innocuous. So he tries out the name. So the angel of death / evil inclination / adversary. He goes to Earth and he tries out Animal Soul. He comes back to God a little while later. Says, God, Animal Soul name doesn't work either, because I'm about to close the deal. Someone's about to make a devastating decision to ruin their life. And then they're like, by the way, what's your name again? I'm like, Animal Soul. I'm not comfortable really taking advice. Animal, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to talk to my wife first. I'll get back to you. And then I don't close the deal. So I need a new name. So God says to the angel of death / evil inclination / adversary / animal soul, he says, okay, fine. I got a name for you. It's actually a perfect name for what you do. I didn't want it to come to this, but since you have a good point. If you do business under this name, you're going to actually be very, very effective at doing what you do, which is to make people ruin their lives making bad decisions. Because if I give you this name, everyone's going to always listen to you. They're always going to think you have their best interests at heart, and they're always going to believe you. So the angel of death / inclination / adversary / animal soul says, God, lay it on me. What's the name? So he tells him the name is Yesh. Existence. I exist. Or you want to be philosophical, call it the conscious ego. The meaning of this parable is that just the separate sense of self, the ego, and sometimes we say ego is ego, edging God out. The separate sense of self, that ego that separates me from you and separates me from God and ultimately separates me from my true self. That's the source of all dysfunction. And therefore, all healing is an attempt to transcend ego, is an attempt to transcend ego, is an attempt to be truly selfless. We're afraid of selflessness. Selflessness is not self-destruction. It's self-transcendence. It's not destroying the self. It's rising above the self to be bigger than we are. And that comes from humility and acceptance and gratitude and that let go and let God. That's called being a spiritual person. And that's health. And we're all struggling with it. And we're all, on a daily basis, we all struggle with that conflict between the ego that would destroy us and the self-transcendence which would connect us back into the stream of life.
Amazing. Can I ask you, in your book, one of the things I read was that Jewish principles relate to the 12-step program. Can you just tell us briefly a little bit about that, please?
It's funny. Every rabbi has the same challenge, which is that you're trying to sell people on a product that they might not be interested in. Like the rabbi gets talking about God and he's talking about spirituality, and the people are like, Rabbi, just finish up and let's get to the Kiddush, right? Okay. So I'll tell you something. The world of Rabbi is an amazing world because these are people for whom spirituality is not a luxury. Spirituality is, well, to put it in a very sober way, no pun intended, but it's life and death. It's life and death. And you really see that it's life and death. You see people for whom, when they are connected, when their relationship with God is strong, they thrive. And as soon as the relationship with God is weakened, when he's treating back into ego, then they get sick very quickly. So to me, sort of the 12 steps recovery is like a laboratory or a proving ground where a lot of spiritual concepts that previously perhaps had been more theoretical, I was able to see how it's not theoretical at all. Because now you have, I mentioned in my book the idea of the canary in the coal mine. I won't get into a whole lengthy exposition, but the canary in the coal mine, which is the idiom, the one who has the symptoms first, or the test case before everybody else. It's a real thing. They used to bring canaries down into the coal mine because the miners would open up a new shaft and there's this gas that's poisonous and you can't see it or taste it or anything, or you can't smell it. So, but you bring the canary down, and the canary, if the canary stops singing, that means everybody's got to run and get out because there's poisonous gas. So is the canary a toxicologist? How does the canary know that there's poisonous gas before the people know? And the answer is very simple, that what kills people kills canaries, it just kills them faster. So all of us need spiritual health, but most of us won't die lack of it. most people can get through life. They can figure out how to manage without God consciousness. Then there are people who I think of as spiritual canaries in the coal mine, that if they don't have spiritual fitness, they get sick very, very fast. And it's evidenced in their very rapid deterioration into their addiction. So my point is to answer your question, in the 12 steps, in the principles of recovery, you see so many truths that we were told, that we studied, that are in the books, and that we learned in yeshiva, but you see it in a very, very obvious way with people who, when they act this way, when they live this way, you know, they're healthy. Don't live that way, things get very bad very quickly. And it's just an amazing thing to see these spiritual principles in such an obvious and such a real and such an empirically evident way. I guess that's what I would say. Everything that we were taught, you can really read how true it is. And you know, that's why, you know, to me there's no conflict or conflict of interest whatsoever. It's the same truth. It's just, like I said, really, really evident and obvious. And for that reason, by the way, I would say that even if you're not an addict and you don't know an addict, statistically speaking, by the way, most people, either you are an addict or you know an addict, because 10% of the population is an addict, and you know 10 people, right? So, but even if you're not an addict, you don't know it, or you think you don't know an addict, it's very worthwhile, I think, to at least have some connection to the recovery community, just for your own edification, for your own spiritual enlightenment. Anyways, there's so much more to be said about that. I wrote a whole book on the topic, but I'll leave it at that.
It's a great book, and I have read it, and I highly recommend it. And you know, it's also interesting when you say 10%. It's not just substance abuse; it's also overeating, spending, gambling. There's all sorts of abuse. If I can just ask you one more question tonight, although I'm sure there are so many more questions. With all the knowledge that's out there and all the tools we have, do you think the next generation is going to have it easier to deal with mental health than the current generation?
That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We live in really amazing times, and the world is a more compassionate and more tolerant place than ever. And that's, yeah, thank God. You know, what I would say, what we need is, you know, we have so much compassion and we have so much, I would say, we're probably the most non-judgmental generation in history, I think. So that's not really an issue. But what we do need at the same time is, when there's all that openness, which is a good thing, it's absolutely a good thing, there also needs to be guidance. Because when everything's a possibility and we don't know how to focus, we don't know how to pick a way of channeling our energy, so that can also become very depleting. You know, our energy gets expended in the wrong directions. So with all the openness and the tolerance and the compassion we have in this generation, we need to also make sure we have some guiding principles that help us keep our focus. And that's why it's very, very important to remember that the guiding principles of our eternal Torah are never outdated. They're not ancient. They're current. They never age. They never get old. They're eternal. They're timeless. And to really, I just want to encourage everybody to, especially at this time, you know, when we're looking for an anchor and we're looking for guidance, increase your Torah study. in whatever way you can, you can go online, so much online. You can reach out to a friend and start a study partnership, find a teacher. There's so many teachers. When I came on here, I saw so many teachers speaking. These are people, I'm sure, shout out to them. They would be happy to teach you. But do something to increase your Torah study. That's that checking in and recalibrating and getting your head on straight. An hour a week, 15 minutes a day, whatever it is that's realistic for you. Your two chickens, whatever it is that you're able to do, but so important.
Thank you so much for your guidance, and thank you for all the tips and techniques. And I know I, for one, will be thinking about you every time I stop and remember to breathe, which hopefully will be a lot. So thank you so much for being here and for getting up so early to be with us. And thank you so much to all of our speakers from tonight and for the last month for teaching us all so much and giving us so much to think about, for inspiring us and giving us so many different tools to cope with factors beyond our control. I know that I have learned so much and I've loved it, and I hope everyone has as well. 5 weeks ago, when my friend Caroline Marcus put me in touch with one of the organizers of Sinai Down Under, Rabbi Nachman Shapiro, he called me to discuss doing a month-long learning program that would unite Australian Jewry and Jews all around the world. And I'm definitely going to miss our very regular daily phone calls. But tonight, it's my absolute honor to introduce Rabbi Nachman Shapiro, as well as being one of the organizers of Sinai Down Under. He's the Rabbi of Chabad North Shore and the president of the Rabbinical Council of New South Wales. So Rabbi Nachman Shapiro, welcome to conclude this evening.
Thank you, Tali. You did a phenomenal job tonight and for the entire series of 4 weeks. So we really appreciate what you've done here tonight, and thank you, Rabbi Shais, and to all our participants, and to really all the organizers. There are 35 organizations involved in Sinai Down Under, all working together. You see, every year at a Pesach Seder, of course, we have the famous song of Dayenu. And Dayenu, when we sing Dayenu, one of the stanzas says, if Hashem had brought us to Mount Sinai and not given us the Torah, that's sufficient. And the obvious question is, what's the point of coming to a mountain without receiving the Torah? The whole point of coming to Sinai was to get the Torah, to get the law, to have the revelation of God. What value was there coming to Sinai without a Torah? And our sages explain in the following way. When the Jewish people came to Sinai, something unique and special happened. When we came to Sinai, we united with each other. The Torah tells us they came and rested near the mountain, ki ish echad b'lev echad, like one man with one heart. We were actually, because Sinai, we know as a humble mountain, it brought out the humility in us. And because it brought out the humility in the Jewish people, we were able to interact and to unite with each other. This Sinai Down Under has been an experience of unity, which comes hopefully from a sense of humility. Number one, a unity among so many rabbis and so many leaders of organizations who work tirelessly in bringing this program to you. And together with that, the unity of having Jews from across Australia, not for week in, week out, for the last 4 weeks coming together and learning with each other. And one more point. Our sages tell us that Abraham learned Torah. Our sages say Isaac learned Torah and Jacob learned Torah. And so therefore the question is asked, what value was there in the giving of the Torah at Sinai when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and our forefathers knew the Torah even before it was given? So what actually took place at Sinai? So the Hasidic philosophy explains that what happened at Sinai wasn't just the giving of the information of the Torah. What happened at Sinai was that prior to Sinai, there was a divide. There was the spiritual and there was the physical material world. You could live in either world, but you couldn't live in both. And when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob studied Torah, that meant they were able to spiritualize themselves. They were able to reach a high level of godly inspiration. But they weren't able to make the physical world spiritual. They weren't able to bring God into this world. There was a great divide, an unbridgeable divide. And what happened at Sinai is God came onto the mountain. He says, now I am breaking this divide. I'm allowing you to bring heaven down to earth, to bring Sinai down under. That's what the giving of the Torah was all about. It was to bring the message of the spiritual and allow it to be part of our material, physical life every day in our own lives. What this means practically for us, the experience of going on the mountain, it might be our prayers, it might be our even study of Torah, it might be the years we spend in yeshiva. These are times when we are uplifted to a higher state. But the task of a Jew is not to remain and allow our Judaism and our inspiration to be only of the higher plane, but rather we must bring it into every aspect of our life, in our homes, in our food, in our business, in our work, in our interaction with every single person. That's what Sinai down under means. I conclude with the following little anecdote. There's a Rabbi Cantor in Bangkok, colleague of mine, who was once invited to a home where there was a Hindu priest and a Buddhist monk and a Christian minister and himself. He said he thought he walked into a joke. And sitting there in this home, the monk said that he spent 30 years on top of a mountain, secluded, meditating, and he reached such a level of incredible enlightenment. And then the Christian minister says he has opened an orphanage where he takes sick children off the streets of Bangkok into his orphanage and helps them and gives them a decent life. And so the rabbi asks the Buddhist monk, he says, if the Christian minister would spend time on the mountain with you for 20 years, what would happen? He says, he too would reach an incredible spiritual heights. So the rabbi turns around and says, yes, but I say, if he spent 20 years on the mountain, there would be thousands of children in the streets of Bangkok who wouldn't be helped. And that's what Judaism teaches us, that it's Sinai down under. We have to take our greatest teachings and make it practical and real in our lives. So first of all, we impress upon all of you to continue learning and to bring the teachings that you learned over these last 4 weeks into your lives to make it practical. And we won't end here. We are certainly planning to continue to bring you more Sinai Down Under programs in the coming weeks and months. So stay tuned. We hope to be able to reach out to you and give you much more Torah, much more beautiful information in a unified way. And I will ask you that we will send out a survey, and we will, through the different rabbis, contact everyone to see their feedback, to hear from their feedback. But if you really want to write directly to us, sinai.under@gmail.com, and we will take your recommendations, and we will take whatever you suggest of how to make this program even better, to inspire, to illuminate, and to ultimately bring Sinai down under, the message of Sinai, the revelation of Sinai, that God himself should be revealed in our reality with the imminent arrival of Mashiach. Good night.